A single cannon blast echoed across the Royal Yacht Squadron grounds, followed by unusual silence that seemed to last longer than expected. Standing on the lawn overlooking the Solent, Princess Anne remained completely motionless for several seconds. For most people, that pause might have gone unnoticed, but those familiar with her decades of disciplined public service immediately sensed something was different. And is known for moving from one duty to the next without hesitation. Yet after firing the ceremonial cannon to mark the beginning of Cowes Week, she appeared briefly lost in thought. Witnesses nearby later described it as if, for a fleeting moment, she had drifted away before quietly returning to the present. The powerful blast was more than just a loud sound. It shook the ground beneath everyone's feet, echoed through the air, and was followed by a brief silence, the ears adjusted after the explosion. That unusual combination of noise and stillness seemed to awaken a deeply buried memory connected to an accident she suffered 2 years earlier. According to those who observed her, the moment carried an emotional weight that few could understand at the time. What surfaced in her mind during those few silent seconds would later become the starting point of a story that surprised even those closest to the royal family. To understand why that moment mattered so much, it is necessary to look back to June 2024 at Gatcombe Park, Princess Anne's country estate. While walking alone across familiar ground, she was seriously injured after an apparent encounter with one of the horses on the property. The accident left her with a concussion and significant head injuries, requiring several days of hospital treatment. When she recovered, doctors confirmed something deeply unsettling: she had completely lost the memory of the events leading up to the accident. Those missing moments remained beyond her reach for 2 years, leaving unanswered questions that quietly stayed with her until the unexpected sound of a ceremonial cannon seemed to unlock part of the past. Doctors later explained that memory loss after a serious concussion is not unusual. A strong impact to the head can erase both the moments before and after an accident because the brain is unable to fully store those memories. That is exactly what happened to Princess Anne. Nearly 2 hours of her life simply disappeared. She could remember waking up in the hospital, but everything leading to the accident had vanished. During her recovery, she repeatedly asked where she had been going and what she had intended to do before she was injured. Unfortunately, no one could provide an answer, leaving her with a gap in her own life that could not be filled. Despite the seriousness of her injuries, Anne returned to public duties far sooner than many expected. Her determination and sense of responsibility never changed. She resumed a demanding schedule of official engagements, carrying out hundreds of royal duties with the same discipline she had shown throughout her life. From the outside, it appeared that everything had returned to normal. However, privately, the unanswered questions about that missing evening never truly disappeared. The forgotten memories remained in the background, quietly reminding her that an important part of that day was still missing. The impact of that memory loss became painfully clear during a private family gathering. While everyone was sharing ordinary conversation, someone casually asked Anne about the evening of her accident. She began to answer, only to suddenly realize that the memory simply was not there. She paused in the middle of her sentence, unable to continue. The room fell silent for a brief moment before someone quickly changed the subject to ease the awkwardness. Although the conversation moved on, the incident revealed just how deeply those missing hours continued to affect her, even after she had returned to her normal royal responsibilities. As time passed, the family gradually stopped discussing the accident, but Princess Anne never completely let it go. Those closest to her noticed that she would occasionally return to the subject in private, not out of emotion, but because she felt there was something important she had forgotten. She couldn't recall the actual memory, yet she carried a strong feeling that she had been walking across that field for a specific purpose. It was like entering a room and knowing you meant to do something, but being unable to remember what it was. That unanswered question remained with her for nearly 2 years. Everything changed during the Cowes Week ceremony. The powerful sound of the historic cannon, combined with the sudden silence that followed, appeared to trigger a forgotten memory. Neurologists have long explained that familiar sounds, places, or unexpected shocks can sometimes bring back memories that were hidden after a head injury. In that instant, and reportedly remembered more than just the walk across the field, she suddenly recalled where she had been heading and why she was making that journey on the evening of her accident. According to the account, Princess Anne had been walking back to the house because she intended to make an important telephone call. The memory of both her destination and the purpose of that call returned together. It wasn't an ordinary conversation she had planned. She had decided to contact her brother, King Charles III, to discuss something she believed was too important to ignore. That realization transformed what had seemed like an ordinary accident into a deeply personal story, setting the stage for the events that would unfold next. The reason behind that planned phone call can only be understood by looking at the difficult period the royal family faced in 2024. Earlier that year, Buckingham Palace publicly announced that King Charles III had been diagnosed with cancer. The news quickly became the focus of international attention, raising concerns about both his health and the future of the monarchy. Although the palace emphasized that he would continue fulfilling his responsibilities with medical guidance, the announcement created uncertainty across the country and placed enormous pressure on the royal family. Only weeks later, another major challenge emerged when Catherine, Princess of Wales, also revealed her own cancer diagnosis. With the senior members of the royal family facing serious health battles at the same time, the burden of official engagements fell heavily on those still able to carry out public duties. Princess Anne became one of the monarchy's most dependable figures during that period, taking on a demanding schedule without complaint. As King Charles gradually returned to work, many admired his determination, but some quietly wondered whether he was pushing himself too hard while still receiving treatment. According to the account, Anne had reached a difficult conclusion. She believed someone close to the king needed to speak honestly about balancing his recovery with his workload. Because of their lifelong relationship and the respect they shared, she felt she was in a unique position to have that conversation. It was not intended as criticism, but as a heartfelt expression of concern for her brother's health. Tragically, before she could make that important call, the accident at Gatcombe Park erased the memory of her decision, leaving that conversation unfinished for nearly 2 years. Princess Anne has built her reputation over decades by staying out of internal family disputes. She has rarely offered public opinions, avoided unnecessary attention, and remained focused on duty above everything else. That quiet approach earned her deep respect within the royal family because whenever she chose to speak, people understood that her words carried genuine importance. According to the account, deciding to call King Charles was not an ordinary decision. It meant breaking a personal rule she had followed for most of her life, simply because she believed the situation had become too serious to ignore. Her concern was shaped by years of watching the royal family face both personal and public challenges. Having witnessed difficult periods throughout the monarchy's history, and understood the emotional and physical demands placed on those at its center, she reportedly feared that her brother was carrying an overwhelming workload while still recovering from illness. In her view, someone needed to encourage him to slow down, focus on his health, and allow himself the time required to recover properly. Believing no one else was likely to raise the issue directly, she decided the responsibility rested with her. That important conversation, however, never happened. Before reaching the house and making the call, the accident interrupted everything and erased the memory of her decision. The meeting she intended to arrange quietly disappeared from her mind, while King Charles continued his public duties without ever hearing the message she had planned to deliver. For nearly 2 years, neither Anne nor those around her realized that an important conversation had been left unfinished, until the unexpected return of her memory brought those forgotten moments back into focus. After the accident, Princess Anne gradually resumed her official duties, and most of the commitments that had been postponed during her recovery were added back to her schedule. However, one important meeting never returned to the calendar. Before her injury, a private conversation with King Charles had reportedly been requested through the usual royal channels. When Anne was hospitalized, the meeting was cancelled, and because she no longer remembered why it had been arranged, it was never rescheduled. What appeared to be a routine change in the diary quietly erased a conversation she had considered deeply important.